This is Learning Curves and Coffee, where we skip the perfection, spill the real, and talk parenting, teaching, and personal growth over a hot cup. I'm Ivory, a mother, edupreneur, and your caffeinated co-pilot through the meltdowns, meetings, and magical moments. Let's get into it. Hi, everybody. Welcome back. Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are listening to this. This is March 5th for me, early in the morning. Of course, you all know I like to get up early and have some alone time and quiet time and do some podcasting. But I named it was March because we are in the third month, almost finishing out the first quarter of 2026. And I don't know about you, but I would say I was thinking about this recently. Of course, I had some intentions for the year that I wanted to execute. I had some goals that I had strategized and organized throughout the months and quarters in order to get to my ultimate goals and accomplishments that I want to complete this year. And I was doing some reflection recently about the status of where everything is in terms of like my progress on like business growth and personal growth and parenting growth and all the things. And upon reflection, I decided that I was landing myself at probably a 6.5 out of 10, which is it's not bad. None of this is bad because like every day we're doing our best, and I don't judge myself at all, but I do like to reflect and analyze. Actually, let me take that back. I do have moments of judgment, but I'm working on it all the time. And so with that being said, there is no judgment about any of this. But I do think that it's important to be reflective and to be in a state of wanting to progress and grow. And in order to do that, you must set intentions on what you want for your life, and then create goals in order to get there. And what comes with that are also tasks in order to accomplish those goals. And so all of those things have been moving, sometimes slow motion, sometimes no motion. I will say I got incredibly sick around in February of this year, which I think gives me a little bit of like grace in all of this. Like I got the flu, and I was out of commission for like a week and a half, and then was recuperating for another week and a half. But I feel good and in a good space now. So I say all that to say, there was a delay in podcast episodes for all of those reasons. However, we are for the primary reason of being sick, but also just trying to recalibrate this year and find the routine and balance of it all, which, I keep hearing like in my readings and listening to podcasts that balance is not the thing, which I'm starting to accept, right? It's this idea of like what you're doing in the moment is the thing that is most important and that you should focus on and commit to. But don't try to have an equal division of committing to and creating space and providing attention to all of your priorities at the same time. So for example, for me, and I think I should probably create some sort of like visual handout for you all so you can see this, but I did an activity maybe 2.5 years ago, maybe longer, where I was thinking about what's the most important to me and what do I need to focus on right now, at least in this next 5 years of my life, because I like to plan things out in like 5-year increments. And so in this season, I decided that like my personal growth and my emotional, physical health were important. So I put that in the center, like me in general, like my health, emotional, physical, spiritual, but then also my personal growth that is tied to my business as well. Those things are incredibly important to me, or that is the priority for me in this season of my life. And I know that I did that because I know that if you put yourself first, everything else will fall into place. Second, it is my parenting of Khalil and making sure that he has a routine and that he's safe and that he's whole and that he experiences joy and that he is developing and on his journey in the way that works for him and me. And then the third is my career. While I am building a business and I have a budding business, I also have a full-time job as an education consultant, leadership coach. And I like the work. I like the work that I do in my full-time job. And I don't plan to leave it anytime soon. I can't anyway. My business is not at the place where I could, but even if it was, I like what I do. And so that's number 3 on my list. And 4 for me was family. And so I say all that to say that in thinking about those 4 priorities, we often try to find balance and be able to give ourselves and our attention to all of those things at the same time. And I'm learning to accept that that's not possible. When I'm focused on my business, I'm focused on my business. And sometimes that takes away from my personal growth, or sometimes it takes away from my career. And it certainly takes away from spending time with my family. And sometimes it takes away from time with Khalil when I focus on career and I travel for my work maybe 2 or 3 days out of the month. I'm away from my son. Or when I'm doing networking or pitching for my business, I am away from my son. And of course that comes with guilt, and there's no balance in that because I'm not present, right? And so going back to my original idea around how is your year going so far? How are you doing? And if you're not where you want to be or where you set intentions to be this year, just know you, first of all, you can get back on that horse. Second, don't judge yourself about it. It's okay. Progress over perfection. Stay in the place of reflection and then get back on the horse. Third point I wanted to make around that is this idea of like, it's okay not to have balance, but when you're in the moment with the thing that you are prioritizing, be committed to that. So when I'm with my son, I'm with my son. Like, I'm not scrolling on social media. I'm not distracted with other things. Like, we are taking our time to engage with each other. Sometimes we're in the house and like he's doing his own thing, I'm doing my own thing, but he knows that I'm here, and we are having small conversations occasionally, or we are I'm pulling him into the kitchen to have him help me with some cooking or chores, and we're just doing what families do in their home, but those things are important for both of us, quite frankly, in order to stay regulated. And to that point, I'm going to talk about regulation in the next episode. But I want to get to our the topic of today, and that is learning to say no and actually meaning it. So first, let me take a sip of coffee because you all know it's 6 o'clock in the morning, and I love my coffee, and I love having my coffee while I'm doing my podcast. It's probably one of my favorite things here lately. I moved over to a different coffee because I was having that was another thing at the top of the year. I was having some coffee issues. I couldn't find a coffee that really worked for me. I used to do Rise. I used to do extra dose because I was really trying to make sure I was drinking coffee as healthy as you can, since I drink it daily. But it started to leave like a bad taste in my mouth for some reason. I don't know. I may need to take a break and come back to it. But now, I don't know. I'm feeling a way about it because I like to support local. I don't like to support big corporations, but I'll be lying if I didn't say that Starbucks coffee wasn't great and tastes fresh and doesn't leave a bitter aftertaste. So anyway, I'm drinking this premium Starbucks coffee with horchata cream, which is delicious and makes me excited. But anyway, so Learning to say no and actually meaning it. So let's start with the word that sounds simple but somehow becomes incredibly complicated once you are an adult. And I want to emphasize that once you're an adult piece, because when I tell you my child says no all the time and he means it, and I love that for him, and I don't want to take that away. But as you grow in your development, adults teach you to not say no about things and to accommodate and to please and to assimilate. And so then you learn to, as you become a young adult and an actual adult, to hold your no, or to stop, to pause on your nose. And so this episode, I want to unpack that because I think no is an incredibly important and powerful word. So the word no, just two letters, one syllable, but for a lot of us, the word comes with a full emotional crisis attached to it, because saying no isn't just about declining something, it's about disappointing someone. And who wants to do that? It's about feeling like you might be letting someone down. It's about wondering if people will think that you are selfish or that you're difficult, that you're not being a team player. Um, and if you're a parent or an educator or a caregiver like me, and honestly, just being a human being who tends to care for other people, how they experience you, you probably know exactly what I'm talking about. You say yes. So you say yes when you're tired, and you say yes when your schedule is already full, and you say yes when your brain is literally screaming, honey, you cannot do another thing. Stop. You still say yes. Why is that? We'll talk about that in a minute. But what happens when you continually say yes, even when you simply can't or you shouldn't? You end up exhausted, of course. You feel overwhelmed and you are annoyed, mostly with yourself. So, today we're talking about something that I had to learn the hard way. And I'm still learning, but I feel like I'm in a good place with it. I want to be able to like directly just say no without giving an excuse. But I'm at the point where I'm like, I can't do it, because I need to rest, or like, I'll bring in another, or I need to spend time with my son, or I have other priorities. Like I'll add to why. Um, and most of the time, I do have other conflicting priorities, but still, I've learned to say no, but I always give a qualifier. But nevertheless, I want to talk about how we can get to the point where we say it and actually mean it, with everyone around us. Not the soft no, not the let me get back to you no, not the I'll see what I can do no, a real clear, peaceful no. There was a season in my life where I said yes to almost everything. Honey, I was like the ultimate people pleaser. Extra meetings, extra responsibilities, helping people solve problems that were not my problem, staying up late at night listening to family and friends vent about things, knowing that I had a deadline for a project that I needed to meet and I needed to get up early. Like I accommodated all of this. And listen, some of that came from a good place, truly. For most of us, it does. But some of it came from something else. I didn't want to disappoint anyone. I didn't want to look like I couldn't handle it. That's key. We sometimes put on this superwoman cape, like we can do everything, or super person cape. Um, I didn't want to seem unhelpful. So a lot of our value in ourselves is tied to what we can do for other people, which is something I am learning in this season of my life to unlearn. So I would say yes to everything, and then as time went on, I'd be sitting there. I'd be stressed, overwhelmed, looking at my calendar, thinking, why did I agree to this? And, wanting to reschedule and cancel at the last minute. And so I know you all can relate to these things. Not mad at the person who asked, of course, but frustrated with myself for over committing to things, because the truth is people can't respect boundaries that you never set. If you're not clear about the expectations that you have for yourself and communicate that to others, you cannot expect them to meet those expectations. And it sounds like obvious, but that's not something that clicked for me until the past few years, right? That realization was humbling and honestly to get a little embarrassing. Like, you didn't realize that you actually have to think about what works for you and then communicate that to others, but you don't know what you don't know, and that's is something that I was not taught, right? So but the moment that I realized it, it was freeing. And here's the thing, there's actually research around this, you all know. I got to go back to the research. Studies on burnout and emotional labor show that people who struggle with setting boundaries are significantly more likely to experience chronic stress and emotional exhaustion. And let's not talk about being a parent of a neurodiverse child, being a parent of an autistic child where you already are experiencing stress and exhaustion. There's no need to add to that, which is why having boundaries as a parent is essential. Basically, when you keep saying yes to everything, your nervous system eventually says, we cannot do this anymore. We can't do this anymore. I don't know if you are familiar with the book, The Body Keeps the Score, but while the body doesn't verbalize, it communicates to you how it's feeling and what it needs. And exhaustion is the primary communicator, right? And that's where burnout lives. So, not necessarily in the work itself does burnout come up, but in the lack of boundaries around the work. Okay? I want us to lean into my discovery, acceptance, and embracing framework to help make better sense of this. Discovery is when you start to notice the patterns, right? I always say this first, you have to notice the patterns and recognize them. Who do you automatically say yes to in your life? I know mine is, for the most part. What situations make you feel pressured to agree? That's an important question. And why do you feel pressured? What requests do you accept and then immediately regret? That is essential too. I've had that happen and recently, and I was like, why are you doing this? Like, let's unpack this. Because you pay attention to your body will tell you the truth before your mouth does. Remember, the body keeps the score. That tight feeling in your chest, that sigh you let out right after the conversation, the knots in your tummy, the headache, that's information. Listen to that. So, those 3 questions I asked, think about those, reflect on those, jot them down, let them marinate. Now, here's the uncomfortable part, the acceptance. Accepting that when you say no, some people may be disappointed. That's not failure, that's reality. I've had it happen to me and I felt the guilt. I felt the urge to come back and say, actually, I'll do it. And I had to parent myself and say, no, Ivory, you said no, it's okay. They will be okay. You cannot be available for everything and still have energy for the things that matter to you. That's the bottom line. You cannot be available for everything and still have energy for the things that matter to you. Your capacity is not unlimited. And you need time for reset and rest also. So even if you have the capacity, maybe that capacity should be used to decompress. So pretending that it doesn't make you strong, it makes you, so stop pretending that helping people makes you superwoman or powerful or strong. It makes you exhausted. It makes you exhausted. It makes you stressed. Let's be honest. And so accept that some people won't like it, and that's okay. And then this is where things begin to shift. Embracing. You start saying no without over explaining. This is where I'm telling you all I'm kind of in the phase where I've accepted, but I'm still kind of moving towards like not qualifying or over explaining. So you start saying no without explaining. You stop feeling like you need to justify every boundary. And you realize that protecting your time and your energy is not rude, it's responsible. Protecting your time and energy is not rude, it's responsible. You know how I learned this? In working in educational spaces, now in nonprofit spaces, and in these like, they're not corporate, but they're kind of corporate-ish in the sense that like there are policies and decorum and practices, some spoken and some unspoken. I will watch many of my coworkers who would, we have a calendar, we have scheduled meetings, and they protected their calendars like it was their firstborn child. Like they were not playing about the time we set is the time I expect to meet. And when that time is up, okay, thank you. See you later. If we go over time, they're very much so like, actually, I need to go. Like, and when I started, and not just that, like I had people be like, I can't do that, or that's not in my capacity to do, or and in the beginning of my career as a people pleaser, and someone who quite frankly was, needed to prove myself over time. That's a whole nother conversation. I perceive people who set boundaries around work as being rude or not caring. But as I have evolved and matured, I have learned from them, and I'm like, actually, it is the most responsible thing you can do. You actually produce better work and have a more quality work. And going back to our personal lives, you have a quality of life when you set boundaries and choose to say no. So you realize that protecting your time and energy, once you realize that protecting your time and your energy is not rude, that it's responsible and necessary, you off to the races after that. So let's talk about what it means to actually, what this actually sounds like in real life and practice, because sometimes the hardest part isn't deciding to say no, it's figuring out how to get it out of your mouth. To actually say it. You'd be surprised how hard it is for people to say. Here are a few phrases that I've learned to use that keep things respectful but clear. I've been before I give you these phases, I've been thinking a lot on the idea of, based on my readings and research around prioritizing being kind as opposed to being nice. And there's a difference that maybe we'll unpack in a different episode, but these phrases remind me of that. So the first phrase, I'm not able to take that on right now. And you pause. You see the pause I made? Don't come in a qualifier explainer. I'm not able to take that on right now. Most people will expect you to explain or to apologize. Don't. Pause. Okay? Next phrase. That doesn't fit into my schedule at the moment. Pause. Leave it there. That doesn't fit into my schedule at the moment. Next phrase. I appreciate you thinking of me, but I'm going to have to pass. I appreciate you thinking of me, but I'm going to have to pass. Yeah. And I would probably, my inclination is to back that up with like, yeah, I'm sorry, I can't. But again, I'm working on removing the I'm sorry piece because there's nothing to be sorry about. I appreciate you thinking about me. I'm going to have to pass. The next one, I can't commit to that, but I hope it gets well. I can't commit to that, but I hope it gets well. This may be in relation to someone wanting you to help them with an emergency or something of that nature. And don't get me wrong, like we have family who we support and who support us, and we want to be able to give so we can receive, but it should come from a place of love and clarity, groundedness, not guilt, right? So these are some of the phrases. Notice something about these responses. None of them come with a full explanation. You don't need to write a thesis to decline something. Clarity is enough. You'd also be surprised how many people you're teaching to do the same when you step into doing that yourself. So this becomes even more important when you're a parent, obviously, especially if you're parenting a neurodiverse child, as I've mentioned, because your schedule is already carrying more than people realize. The nuances of the day will take you out if you don't have your boundaries up. Therapy appointments, school meetings, emotional energy, advocacy, you name it. Those things are can get exhausting, right? And emotionally and physically. Sometimes saying no is simply protecting your child's capacity and your own. And for educators, it's the same. Teaching is one of those professions where the expectation to do more with less is continual. Another meeting, another committee, another thing to plan. But sustainability is essential. It's paramount. And you cannot pour from a cup that is, I'm going to say that again. You cannot pour from a cup that is constantly filled with obligations instead of rest. I'm telling y'all, rest is essential, and there's no reason to feel guilty about rest. There's also something a bit deeper happening here. For many of us, learning to say no is emotional work. If you grew up being the helper, the pleaser, the accommodator, the responsible one, the person everyone relied on, then boundaries can feel uncomfortable. But boundaries aren't rejection, they're information. They teach people how to treat you, as I mentioned at the top of the podcast. When you realize what you want and you communicate what you want, then you can expect people to acquiesce to that. You teach people how to treat you, but you first have to learn what it is that you want. And maybe more importantly, they teach you how to value your own time and energy. Right? People are mirrors, and we're only here to teach each other. And so they teach you how to value your own time when they bump up against your time. So most times I would encourage you to see saying no as an opportunity, not as a chore, right? It's an opportunity to prioritize rest, to prioritize yourself, to amplify your boundaries. So in closing, here's a small challenge for you this week. Practice one clear no. I like to practice it with Khalil because he likes to ask for stuff that he knows that it's a no. Phone after a certain time, no. Candy, certain types of candy, no. Certain types of soda, no. Like it's certain things I love saying no about because that's not what we're doing. So practice saying no, easy no, right, to someone or something. Just one. No over explaining, no guilt spiral, no apology tour, just honesty. Because when you start saying no to the things that drain you, you create space for things that matter to you, as I mentioned, that matter to you. Have you all ever looked up? I know I'm about to close, but I just had this thought. If you looked up and realized that, like, my week has been spent doing things for doing things for everyone else and everything else except myself. I know we all have that moment. When I have that moment, honey, I am not a happy camper. I could tell by the end of the week I am very unhappy, and so then I need to do something for myself, even if it's just rest. Your peace, your family, your health, and your purpose are the things that are most important. And when I say family, sometimes we think about doing for them, but when I say family, it's about being with them, experiencing them, enjoying them, right? And in many ways, that's doing too. Um, it's not selfish to say no, it's wisdom. So, I want to thank you all for joining me for another episode and being patient because it's been a couple of weeks, but I really appreciate you all. I see you listening. I see your comments, and I'm really excited because I actually I'm going to add a new segment onto the podcast in quarter 2 because I've been getting questions from parents and teachers lately who listen to the podcast. And so I want to do like a listener's letter segment, but I'm still thinking through what that looks like. But I say that to say that I see and hear you all, and I want you all to know that I am absolutely grateful. So remember, a good cup of coffee is always great, but boundaries are even better. They are even better. So find something to say no to this week. Until next time, take care of yourself. Bye. This is Learning Curves and Coffee.